Follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget to like. Nosferatu, 1979. Immediately off the bat, let me say this. The compositional setup, as far as visually, for the 1922 version, I think is more well done. But in the 79 version, they do have a couple of shots that kind of look cool, but the information is not compositional. Basically, what I'm saying is that while the camera technology from 1979's Nosferatu is obviously superior to the 1922 version, compositionally, the 1979 version is sometimes a headache to look at and sometimes looks kind of cool. What is very interesting about this version, though, of Nosferatu is that, as I said in the last video, the original Nosferatu was almost wiped from existence because Bram Stoker's wife, she tried to have Nosferatu, the film, erased from existence. So in this film, what's interesting is that it's called Nosferatu, but all of the characters are named from the characters of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So instead of Hutter and Emma, it's Jonathan and Lucy Harker. And instead of Count Orlok, it's his name is literally Count Dracula. And instead of his assistant being Knock, it's Renfield. And even Van Helsing makes an appearance in the film. So I wonder how that worked. I guess because it's been so long in 1979, but by the time it's 1979, it's not like Bram Stoker's wife is still alive. But how did they still secure the rights to use the Bram Stoker Dracula character names in a movie that is supposed to be about Nosferatu? That I found very interesting. I wonder if anyone in the comments, if you have any historical knowledge on that for that particular film, that would be interesting to let us know below. But Count Dracula, Nosferatu, the actor that portrays him in the 1979 version doesn't have the same impact as the kind of goofy one in the 1922 version. He doesn't have any kind of presence. He doesn't have like a menacing presence. And he is kind of goofy because it is 1979. So, the acting, the performances back then sometimes are a little campy. But it wasn't amusing, I guess is what I'm saying. 1979 Nosferatu, our vampire, is not memorable. He doesn't have any kind of stage presence. He breathes really heavily, though. He breathes louder than he talks, which is kind of annoying sometimes. But we basically get the same story setup from the first one where, well, basically we have Renfield, or Knock, as this real estate representative for Nosferatu, and he sends Jonathan Hutter, or Harker. It's so confusing now because it's names from Dracula, but it's in Nosferatu. It's like a terrible anime crossover. But we get the same thing where he is given this task of going to Nosferatu's castle and trying to secure this deal for Nosferatu to buy property in Wisborg. And we have the same emotional setup with Lucy and Jonathan, and she's like, don't go. She's been having premonitions and she doesn't want him to leave. But this time we do get a little bit more time with this couple before he leaves for Transylvania. And as he's on his way to Transylvania, we get the same kind of moment where he's like, well, I'm going to Count Dracula's castle. And everyone's like, pause, don't go. But no one wants to help him get to the castle too, which is a change in this film as opposed to the previous one, where he has a chariot to take him to the castle. In this one, he kind of has to travel by foot until he gets close enough to the castle where the castle's chariot picks him up and takes him to the castle. But yeah, other than that, most of the story is the same. We get Jonathan having to escape from the castle, Nosferatu setting up his U-Haul coffin situation on the carriage. The one thing I'm hoping for in the new film, because in the past two films we have the voyage by ship, but we don't. I hope we get a little bit more graphic in the deaths of the ship crew, because in the past two films you kind of just it's happening kind of silently on the ship, not silently, but it's happening one by one. We won't get to see it. It's more like you hear about it. So that old saying, show don't tell. So I hope we get more show than tell as far as the voyage from Transylvania to Wisborg, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to get some terror induced into the story if we get to see a bit more of Nosferatu in action. In this film, it is funny though, we do get a couple moments where Nosferatu sees a crucifix and he's like, like kryptonite. And they do include the fact that vampires don't have a reflection. There's a scene where Lucy, or Ellen, the character that's supposed to be Ellen, she's looking in a mirror and she's getting ready for bed or something like that. and Nosferatu enters the room, but you don't see him because there's no reflection on the mirror. That's another thing too. They do obviously the iconic window scene where she comes to the window. So there's definitely things that you're already going to see from the trailers of the new Nosferatu, the 2024 Nosferatu. But so far, man, I wonder what his face is going to look like, because it's so funny because Nosferatu is so ugly. He kind of reminds me of that meme where it's like, "Hey, my homie thinks you're cute," and then it shows like the homie and he's all ugly. But yeah, the difference in this film though is that Lucy actually lures Nosferatu into her room to kind of trap him in for the sunrise, and then Van Helsing kind of finishes him off. So they definitely changed some things, obviously, in this film. There's going to be changes in every version of this Nosferatu. I actually just recently found out about a 2023 version, which I'm actively looking for to see if I can do a review on that one as well. So I'm going to skip the Nosferatu in Venice because it is actually just a sequel to this one that we just reviewed. And it's Jonathan's character becomes a vampire, and he basically becomes Nosferatu in the sequel to Nosferatu. So I kind of just want to cover the ones that are the source material for the 2024 version coming out. But yeah, if you've seen the 1979 version, the 1922 version, if you have more backstory on how they were able to use the Bram Stoker character names in the 79 version, I'd be interested in finding out about that. But yeah, so let me see if I can find this 2023 version, and then we'll review that one as well. For more uneducated expert analysis on film and cinema and the creative field in general, follow us on Twitter at Ghettoplex_MP4, on Instagram at Ghettoplex.mp4, and subscribe to us on YouTube at Ghettoplex.